the Radio Forest Podcast.
Hey there, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Gov't Mule, Heavy Load Blues. This is the first blues album for Gov't Mule, and I was wondering, how can that be? Gov't Mule is blues, the Allman Brothers are blues, and then I listened to it. They're really not, and I don't know how else to word that, but it's a tempo, it's a feel, it's an unwritten sadness. It's kind of stereotypical of the word blues, but this really is a different sound for you.
Yeah, this is a much more traditional approach to blues than we've ever taken. And the way we recorded it, it sounds like what's in my head of a lot of my favorite blues records from the old days, you know. I had written a handful of blues tunes during the whole COVID lockdown thing, and I don't really normally write very many what I consider to be traditional blues songs. But I'd also been making a list through the years of blues songs that I wanted to cover, so we just kind of combined those two things together and made a record that is a whole different approach for us. You know, blues is a big part of everything we do, but this is the first time we've made a blues record.
So the Muddy Waters and the Otis and all the stuff that you covered on this, then you've been thinking about those songs for quite a few years back?
Yeah, and I wanted to do stuff that we hadn't done on stage before for the most part, or in the studio. You know, we've covered Son House on previous records. We covered Robert Johnson on previous records. And we did a live show one time at the Beacon where we did the Three Kings, Freddie King, B.B. King, and Albert King. At some point, that could come out as a live record, so I didn't want to revisit that. But there's stuff like Elmore James and Howlin' Wolf and Bobby Blue Bland and Junior Wells that I felt needed to be represented. So each song we kind of looked at on a song-by-song basis. Are we going to make it sound similar to the original version, or are we going to make it go into a completely different direction? And then there's the 6 or 7 original songs as well, that it was important for those songs to sound like they belonged with the other songs, you know.
Now, if you wrote a lot of these songs during the COVID lockdown, did you find yourself having more time with your family than ever before, as a father, as a husband, and also more time to just play your guitar for yourself?
Yeah, I think the two most positive things that came out of the lockdown for me were spending time with my family. I have a 10-year-old son, and I spent a year and a half with him, which was awesome. And then being able to write music more than I have in decades. You know, I write a lot anyway, but I wrote so much material the last year and a half that we were just dying to get in the studio to record as much as possible.
I've seen some pictures of a steel guitar. One of the videos, I believe you're playing an SG with you guys in the studio. There's an acoustic sound on a couple of the songs, and I know you're a Les Paul guy. How many different guitars did you cycle through on Heavy Load Blues?
Almost a different guitar on every song. I played my 59 Les Paul on some stuff, a 61 335, a 63 345, a 67 355, but also played some old Dan Electro guitars from the 50s and 60s. And it was all vintage amplifiers as well from the 50s and 60s, old Gibsons and Fenders and Supros and stuff. You know, for me, it was a good excuse to get some of this gear that I've been collecting for a long time and bring it all into the studio and see what worked and what sounded good. Hey, what sounds good when I plug this guitar into this amp? And it was very inspiring.
You know, I got to be honest with you, I don't want to be too corny, but when I first heard Make It Rain, and I'm sure you've had this happen being a musician, but sometimes you hear a song and you get those shivers, you get that chill, you get the hair in your arms. And Make It Rain did it for me. I think it might be not just the power of the song, but what you just kind of touched upon is you guys recorded this live on analog tape on vintage equipment. So I think how do you describe the difference between, in the end, of analog and digital? Because digital's fine. You hear the song, it sounds great. You can make money and you can go on tour, but there's just something different about what you guys did.
Yeah, and for me, it's a personal preference. I just think the sound is better. And the old equipment, the old guitars, the old amplifiers, sound better. They break down more often. They take a lot more maintenance and love and care. So it's easy to use newer equipment on the road and even in the studio. But when you A/B the difference, it's obvious.
I spent quite a bit of time in North Carolina on the Outer Banks, but also my family is from kind of like Raleigh, Durham, a little town called Whiteville. Is that similar to Asheville at all in the landscape and also the musical impact of the Allman Brothers and the Marshall Tucker Band and Skinner and all that?
Well, Asheville's more in the mountains, whereas the Raleigh area is more flatland. But it's beautiful. You know, that whole part of the country is gorgeous. And the music growing up, when I was growing up there, each region kind of had its own sound. The musicians in one area had this uniqueness that came from all the locals teaching each other and inspiring each other and stuff. And that still exists today, but, you know, with technology, you can easily access what somebody in Iceland is doing or what somebody in Italy is doing. But in the old days, we were just very influenced by the local music, and so that's where a lot of that stuff came from. And there's a lot of great guitar players in Asheville.
Warren Haynes, again, from Gov't Mule, Heavy Load Blues, new album. He's also played with the Grateful Dead, a ton of shows with Dave Matthews, and of course his tenure in the Allman Brothers Band. 2017, super tough year. We lost Butch Trucks and Greg Allman. How did you deal with all of that and still continue to tour and play music and talk to fans and do interviews and be cheery?
Well, it was really tough, and I remember the day that Greg passed, we were playing at a festival. Gov't Mule was supposed to play this festival, and everybody was saying, do you want to cancel? Do you want to go home? And I just thought back to the way the Allman Brothers dealt with losing Dwayne Allman in 1971 and losing Barry Oakley in 1972. They always played through the pain. They always used music for its healing properties, you know, and let music be part of the whole process. And I think we're all thankful that we have music. Without it, it would be a much tougher world.
I'm assuming the answer is no, but do you have the famed mushroom tattoo of the Allman Brothers?
I'm actually the only person that doesn't have that. I have no tattoos, and everyone else from the Allman Brothers has that tattoo except me.
I love the new record. Hopefully we'll see you out on the road soon. And thanks for the call today. Heavy Load Blues, the Gov't Mule, Mr. Warren Haynes.
My pleasure.